Hello, in this video, I want to go through all the cards that I would include if I was going to build a Krang Utrom Warlord Commander deck. For 9 mana, it's a 9/9 with Flying, Trample, Indestructible, and Haste, and it gives your other artifact creatures Flying, Trample, Indestructible, and Haste. It reminds me of an Utrom Memorial, the legendary artifact that costs 7 mana that gives your creatures a bunch of abilities, tacked onto an even bigger creature. Utrom Memorial says creatures you control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from black and red. I would include this in this list. It just reminded me of this card. All is Dust is a kindred sorcery for Eldrazi. It's 7 mana. Each player sacrifices all permanents they control that are one or more colors. We are not going to play any colors because we're just a colorless commander deck. So it'll make each player sacrifice all of their non-lands, non-artifacts, essentially. All of your opponents' days. So super good card to play in an all colorless deck. Basalt Monolith is 3 mana. It doesn't untap during your untap step. You can tap it for colorless. It's 3 mana, untap it. This is a weird card to play because it's just untap. But on turn 3, you can play this out. And then on turn 4, you can have access to 7 mana. Getting up to turn 5, you play this. Turn 6, you untap, play a land, tap it all, play your commander. It has indestructible. It's going to be hard to get rid of. Or you can untap Basalt Monolith on a turn later in the game when you just have an excess of mana. But it just helps you get out your commander or your other big creatures faster, especially the ones you really need into play faster. Blightsteel Colossus is 12 mana for an 11/11 with Trample, Infect, and Indestructible. If it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So this is another huge creature, another huge artifact. It already has Trample, but imagine a Blightsteel Colossus that has Trample, Infect, Indestructible, Flying, and Haste. You're going to be able to knock out a player pretty quickly, I think. Canoptek Spider is 5 mana for a 4/4 with Flying. It's an artifact creature. Whenever another non-token artifact creature or vehicle enters under your control, draw a card. Something that you're going to see in this list is I was trying to find all the artifacts that do the things we'd normally want in other colors, right? In green, when a creature enters, we're going to want to draw a card. That type of effect has been put on an artifact, and it's slightly more expensive of a mana value than we would expect from a normal green card, but being able to draw a card in your colorless deck is great. Chief of the Foundry is a lord for our artifacts. It's good. Jamil, the Inner Sun, is 6 mana for a legendary artifact. Your spells can't be countered. That's great. When you're paying 8, 9, 10, 11 mana for some of your top end spells, making sure your opponents can't counter them is great, especially whenever your spells have indestructible or your creatures have indestructible. They're still weak to removal of type in the stack. So being uncountable is great. And at the beginning of next end step, at the beginning of each end step of your end steps, discover 5. So you'd cascade essentially until you hit a 5 or less, and then you can cast it or put it into your hand. Chrome Dome is 2 mana. It's a 1/3. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+0. And you can pay 5, create a token that's a copy of another target artifact you control. That token gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Anything with a cool enter the battlefield ability or any beefy boy that you want to have haste, flying, and trample and just immediately attack with is great. Cityscape Leveler is 8 mana for an 8/8 with Trample. Whenever you cast a spell and whenever it attacks, this is a great card to copy with Chrome Dome because it has an attack trigger. Destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a tapped Power Stone token and has Unearth for 8. So you can cast it from your graveyard, but it will be exiled at the end of the turn. It gains haste and you can attack with it just for 1 turn. But a big creature, great to give this flying because then it's harder to block. Giving it haste means you get to get 2 triggers of destroying a non-land permanent in the same turn, which is great. Cloud Key. When this artifact enters, choose artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. The spells of the chosen type cost 1 to cast. We're going to choose artifacts. We're not playing a ton of Eldrazi in this list because Krang only gives other artifact creatures, not other colorless creatures. So you're going to choose artifacts so you can potentially double spell with it. Commander's Plate is 1 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity. So that's protection from all colors, and protection color is the death rule. So it cannot be damaged, it cannot be destroyed, it cannot be enchanted or equipped, blocked, or targeted by. So it essentially makes all of your creatures unblockable except for by colorless creatures, which those creatures also have to have flying when your commander's in play. So how many colorless flying creatures are your opponents going to be playing? Not many. And then Krang giving all of those creatures trample as well. How many colorless, flying, high toughness creatures are your opponents going to be playing? Crypto for All is 4 mana for a 3/3. Other artifact creatures you control have hexproof. It's good. It doesn't protect itself, unfortunately, but Krang can, of course, give this indestructible. But in the early game, giving your stuff hexproof. Even the late game, of course, people are going to be playing exiled board wipes like Farewell. But in general, they're going to be playing exile removal that can exile any of your indestructible things. It's going to be a target thing, which the Thrall can protect against. Cyberman Patrol is 2 mana for a 2/2. Artifact creatures you control have a flipped 3. Whenever a creature with a flipped 3 becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. Quickly to hit for even more damage on top of all of our trampling damage. Cyberman Squadron is 7 mana for a 5/5. Non-legendary artifact creatures you control have Myriad. So whenever a creature with Myriad attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker. Exile the tokens at end of combat. So, for example, would be Darksteel Colossus. This is a non-legendary artifact creature. You attack with it, you're going to make 2 more copies that are attacking you to opponents. At the end of the turn, you're going to exile them, but of course, it's just going to shuffle the library, which doesn't matter. But making all of your non-legendaries, and there's not that many legendary artifacts that you are playing that are also creatures. So almost all of your colorless things, your artifact, non-legendary creatures, you'll get a ton of token copies of. And if you have your commander, they will have flying, flying, trample, indestructible, and haste. Darksteel Colossus is an 11/11 that already has trample, indestructible. Darksteel Forge gives all of your artifacts indestructible. You can see, with power creep a little bit, and if it's a creature too, it gets a lot of buffs. Darksteel Forge is 9 mana, Krang is 9 mana. Darksteel Monolith is indestructible. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than the mana cost for a colorless spell you cast from your hand. You have plenty of very expensive spells. Being able to cast 1 for free each turn is great once you get up to 8 mana. Dreamstone Hedron is 6 mana. It taps for 3 colorless. You can pay 3, sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. What I love about this card is that on turn 6, you can play this and then immediately tap it and play a 3-drop. It's good. It's not a creature, so it just immediately taps. Echoes of Eternity is 3 waste for a Kindred Enchantment Eldrazi. If a triggered ability of a colorless permanent, of a colorless spell you control, or another colorless permanent you control triggers, it triggers additional time. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. There is plenty of copies of triggers that you could copy in this deck. And there are plenty. Everything is a colorless spell, so you get a copy of every single colorless spell is fantastic. This card's going to be one of the best in your deck. Eldritch Immunity is 1 colorless for a Kindred Instant Eldrazi. Target creature you control gains protection from each color until end of turn. And then if you pay 5, you can Overlord it. So this is a good board wipe protection, because now they can't be damaged, they can't be destroyed, don't lose to Blasphemous Act. Everflowing Chalice is a mana rock that you can decide how many charge counters go on it by paying 2. And then you can tap it for the rest of time, for the rest of the game. You add a colorless for each charge counter on it. Forsaken Monument is 5 mana, colorless creatures you control the +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add additional colorless. And whenever you cast a color spell, you gain 2 life. All of your lands are going to tap for colorless. Almost all of your lands. Foundry Inspector is 3 mana. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Tons of artifacts in the list. Geode Golem is 5 mana for a 5/3 with trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast your command zone from your commander from the command zone without playing its mana cost. Card is insane. It's a 5/3 for 5 mana that lets you cheat out your 9-drop commander. Fantastic. Glaring Flesh Raker is 3 mana for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, so all of the spells in our deck, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. Whenever another colorless creature enters under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It does all of that for 3 mana on a 2/2. Every single time you cast a colorless spell, it gives you a temporary mana, like a treasure, but it's an Eldrazi spawn that you can use to cast your huge spells. Hedron Archive is 4 mana for an artifact. You can tap, add colorless. You can pay 2 to sacrifice this artifact to draw 2 cards. And then Mindstone is like the baby Hedron Archive. It's 2 mana, taps for 1 colorless, pay 1, tap, sacrifice, draw 2 cards. Hedron Archive is 2 and 2. And then, let's see. Dreamstone Hedron is 6 for 3 and 3. So that's a fun little thing. Iron Spider Stark upgrade is 3 mana for a 2/3. It's a legendary artifact creature spider hero. It has vigilance. It taps to put a +1/+ encounter on each artifact creature and or vehicle you control. And you could remove 2 +1/+ encounters from one artifact you control to draw a card if you pay 2. So buffing all your things is great when your creatures are all going to have trample, because it means your opponents die sooner. And then being able to remove those +1/+ encounters on your huge things that are already huge to draw cards is also great. Jorah's Familiar is 4 mana. Historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. Basically all of our spells cost 1 less. Karn Legacy Reforged is 5 mana. Its power and toughness are equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. So when your commander's in play, it's 9. At the beginning of your upkeep, add colorless for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So for each artifact, it just gives you a ton of colorless, and you can use that to do anything that you need. And it also lets you keep it throughout the entire turn. Liberator, Urza's Battle Thopter. It's 3 mana for a 1/2 legendary artifact creature. It's a Thopter with flash and flying. You may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast this spell is greater than this creature's power, put a +1/+ encounter on this creature. So it gets bigger, it scales with as you cast different things. And it starts at only 1. So as soon as you cast a 2-drop, or a 3-drop, or a 4-drop, it gets counters. Lightning Greaves, 2 mana for an artifact equipment. It gives the equipped creature haste and shroud. Giving any of your creatures before Krang is in play, haste is great, protecting your stuff, and then giving Krang shroud means it's even harder to get rid of. It will literally only die to a white, basically removal spell that exiles all creatures. Metalwork Colossus is 11 mana. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is a total mana value on a non-creature artifacts you control. Sacrifice 2 artifacts to return this from your graveyard to your hand. Once you get just a couple artifacts in play, Mind Stone, Soul Ring, Mind's Eye really lowers the mana value. 10 mana that can gain Flying, Trample, Indestructible, and Haste and be less than 11 mana is great. Metalworker, 3 colorless for a 1/2 artifact creature. Tap, reveal any number of artifact cards in your hand. You add 2 mana to your mana pool for each card revealed this way. I really like this as reserve list. I just got one pre-COVID, so I'm going to include in this list. Don't have to include in yours. Mindstone, 2 mana artifact. Tap, add a colorless. 1 tap, sack Mindstone, draw a card. Mind's Eye is 5 mana. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. You need to have as much card draw as possible, and you're not playing any colors but colorless, so you got to play Mind's Eye. Mycosynth Golem is 11 mana with affinity for artifacts, and artifact creatures you play have affinity for artifacts. Insane. Once you have like 4 or 5 artifacts in play, almost everything in your deck is going to be free. And then once you can get up to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 artifacts, it's going to be insane. You can play your commander for free. Myr Battle Sphere is 7 mana. It enters, creates 4 1/1s. So now, if you have, Mycosynth Golem in play, all of your artifacts cost 5 less. Well, not all of your artifact creatures, I should say. Whenever this creature attacks, you may tap X, untap Myr you control. If you do, this creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn, and it deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. Myr Retriever is 2 mana. Whenever it dies, you can return a different artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Mystic Forge lets you look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast artifacts and color spells from the top of your library. So it gives you pseudo card advantage, and then you can pay a life to exile top card of your library. You can't play lands from the top, so tapping that to just pay to get rid of a land, so you can keep casting things off the top with Mystic Forge. Not of This World is 7 mana for a Kindred instant Eldrazi. Counter target spell or ability that targets a permanent you control. This spell costs 7 less to cast if it targets a spell or ability that targets a creature you control with power 7 or greater. So it's free if it targets a huge creature you control. Null Elemental Blast is 1 colorless for an instant. Choose 1. Counter target multicolored spell or destroy target multicolored permanent. That's most people's commanders. It's going to be fantastic to just for 1 mana counter a commander or destroy a difficult multicolored permanent. Palladium Myr is 3 colors for a 2/2. It adds 2 colors. Platinum Angel, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. This card gets a lot better whenever you give it indestructible. Platinum Empyrean, it's an 8 mana 8/8. Your life total can change. Again, this card gets a lot better whenever you give it indestructible. Scrap Trawler is 3 colorless for a 3/2. It's an artifact creature construct. Whenever it or another artifact you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, Return to your hand to artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana value. We all know how slick this card is. If Krang dies, you can get back anything from your graveyard 8 or less and put it back into your hand. Just refills your hand after a board wipe, after a difficult combat, after making some chump blocks. There's a lot of value. Sculpting Steel, you may have it enter as a copy of any artifact from the battlefield, both on your side or your opponent's. Selective Obliteration is 3, a colorless and a colorless for a sorcery. Each player chooses a color, then exile each permanent unless it's colorless or only the color its controller chose. Going to exile a good amount of things from each person's board. Its only color is, or it's only the color its commander chose. Wow, interesting. So if I'm playing a black-red deck against this card, and I choose black, I exile all of my red things and all of my red and black things. I keep all of my black things and all of my colorless things. Okay, interesting. Shimmer Mirror is 3 colorless for flash. You may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Flashing in something from your hand to be a giant blocker is great. Soul Ring, good old Soul Ring. Solemn Simulacrum is 4 mana for an artifact creature golem. It's a 2/2, it enters, it gets a basic land, puts into play tapped. Whenever it dies, you draw a card. Got a ramp in your colorless decks. Steel Overseer is 2 colorless tap, put a 1/1 counter on each artifact creature you control. Just like the Spider-Man card. The Eternity Elevator is 5 mana for legendary artifact spacecraft. It taps for 3 colorless, and you can tap it to add X amount of any one color, where X is the number of charge counters on the Eternity Elevator. You have a ton of huge creatures, stationing up to 20. Getting 20 charge counters is not going to be that difficult. The Immortal Sun is 6 mana for legendary artifact. Players can't activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 less, and creatures you control get +1/+1. Just does a lot to a lot of different avenues of how you're going to play the game. Great card. The One Ring, when it enters, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. Then of your upkeep, you lose a life for each burning counter on the One Ring. Tap, put a burning counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burning counter on the One Ring. Card does a lot of stuff, protects you from dying in the mid game when you're trying to ramp up to playing your commander, and lets you draw a ton of cards, and then it's going to die eventually. Or you can just, I don't think we have any ways to flicker it in this deck, but I think we have ways to sacrifice it. Thought Vessel is 2 colorless. You have no max hand size. It's not going to be super relevant. But a 2 mana rock that adds colorless is great. Grand Dynamo, 4 mana artifact, tap, add waste, colors. Ugin, Eye of the Storms, one of the best planeswalkers in the deck. 7 mana for a 7 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever you cast a spell, exile to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. That's phenomenal. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So every single time you cast any of your spells, we're just going to exile one of your opponent's things. +2, you gain 3 and draw a card. 0, add 3 colorless. -11, such like for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. Basically, you put your whole deck into play, and your commander has haste, and I believe a Chromeless Memorial gives your creatures haste, so just everything can come out fast. Ugin the Ineffable is 6 mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. It makes all of your colorless spells cost 2 less to cast. Great static. +1, exile the top card of your library face down, then look at it. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into your hand. -3, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Just a great static of making all of your things cost less. Gives you some card advantage and can let you destroy something as well. Ultima Origin of Oblivion is 5 mana for a 4/4 with flying. Whenever this creature attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities and has tap add colorless. Whenever you tap a land for colorless, add additional colorless. Almost all of the lands tap for just colorless in this deck. We're going to get to lands really soon. If you can't tell, all the cards are in alphabetical order, and then at the end of all the cards, I get into the lands. Unwinding Clock is 4 mana for an artifact. Untap all artifacts you control during each other player's tap step. This is great whenever you have artifact lands or artifacts that had mana and any of your flash enablers. So now you can cast multiple spells per turn, but it also gives all of your creatures pseudo vigilance, as well as all the other abilities, flying, trample, indestructible, and haste that they get. Warping Whale is 1 and a colorless. Choose 1, exile target creature with power toughness 1 or less. Counter a sorcery. Create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi creature token. I think the majority of the time you're going to want to counter target sorcery spell. Their board wipes you're going to have to deal with the majority of the time are going to be sorceries. So this is protecting you against Farewell or There's a card from Final Fantasy that exiles all creatures. I can't think of what it's called. Worn Power Stone is 3 mana for an artifact. It enters tapped. It adds colorless. Worm Coil Engine is 6 mana for a 6th Death Touch lifelink. Whenever it dies, create a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch, and create a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature with lifelink. So it's a 6/6 with Death Touch and lifelink. When it dies, it becomes 2 smaller versions of itself, 1 Death Touch and 1 lifelink. Now we're going to get into the lands. I am playing, I believe, 15 wastes. There are 15 wastes. Down in the description, there's a Mox Field list. I believe there's either 10 or 15 wastes. I can't remember what was settled. But you can swap any of these out with any other amount of wastes. These are just some of the ones that I think would be great. Ancient Tomb is add 2 colorless. It deals 2 damage to you. I know it's pricey. You could just play a waste. This can just get you winning the game faster. Bonder's Enclave adds a colorless 3 tap draw a card. Activate only if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Not going to be hard in our deck, but playing these value lands is great. You know, typically whenever you're playing multiple colors, 2 or 3 colors, you're not playing a lot of utility lands. This deck is chock full of utility lands, and so you get even more value. You're not playing multiple colors. You're not getting the things that the colors can do specifically. You know, in blue, you can draw a ton of cards. In white, you can draw plenty of cards. In green, you can ramp. So being able to get extra advantage from your land base is great. Buried Ruin taps for a colorless, or you can pay 2 sackless land, return to an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Command Beacon taps for a colorless, where you can tap sacrifice land to put your commander into your hand from the command zone. Commander tax on a 9-drop is going to get expensive fast. Once it gets up to 11 or 13 or even 15, it's going to be very difficult. Darksteel Citadel is an artifact land, so it counts for all of your artifact things. It's indestructible and it has tap for a colorless. Inventor's Fair is a legendary land. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain a life. Not going to be hard to accomplish. Tap, add a colorless to your mana pool. 4 tap, sack it to search for an artifact card or villain put into your hand. I think most of the time you're going to want to get like the Mycosynth's Golem or the Darksteel Monolith that is indestructible that makes the first spell you cast each turn 0. I believe that those are the 2 cards that I would think I'm going to get the most often. Muruganda Raceway taps for a colorless, but once your speed is up to 4, it's an Ancient Tomb without the life loss. Reliquary Tower. I don't know how often your hand's really going to be that full, but it's just better than a waste. Rogue's Passage taps for a colorless, 4 tap, target creature can be blocked this turn. 9 combat damage, commander to damage from your commander. Unblockable is great. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods adds for a colorless or adds for 2 colorless, only to cast colorless spells if you control 7 or more lands. But in the early game, it's just a waste. Temple of the False God. This one's, a little suspicious. Tap, add colorless, activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Great in this deck because you don't care. There's no mana requirement. There's no color pip requirements. But this not doing anything the first 4 turns of the game is a little suspicious to me. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon adds a colorless. You can pay 2, tap. You gain a 1 life for each color's creature you control. It's going to gain you 3, 4, 5, 6 life easily. Ugin's Labyrinth is a land with imprint. When it enters, you may exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. You can tap, add a colorless, or tap, add 2 if you exile the card with it. You can tap to return the exiled card to its owner's hand. I can't believe the end of that text is on the card. I feel like it should just be in print forever, but you can also just return it to your hand later in the game when you don't need the excess mana. Urza's Cave, tap out a colorless, 3 tap, sacrifice Urza's Cave, search your library for a land card, put onto battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So in the early game, it's just a waste, but you can search for any land that you want. Urza's Factory, tap out a colorless, and then you can pay 7 to make a 2/2. Not ideal, but again, it's better than just plain waste. Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower. You can just get away with playing them. If you have anything that tutors out from lands, that's good too. But you just get away with playing them. They're strictly better than a waste. Urza's Saga adds a colorless. You can, when it gets to level 2, you can pay 2 sack. Pay 2 tap, create a 0/0 colors construct artifact creature token. This creature is possible to each artifact you control. When it is up to 3, use your library for an artifact card with mana value 0 or 1, put onto the battlefield, and shuffle. Worst case is it gets your Soul Ring. Best case is it gets like your Commander's Plate, which is insane in this deck. Urza's Workshop is tap for a colorless. Metalcraft, tap, add colors for each Urza's land you control. Activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts. This is an Urza's land. 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 So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6, 7. plenty of chances for this to tap for multiple mana. Not even that late in the game, because if you play an artifact on turn 2, 3, and 4, turn 5 this is tapping for 2. War Room for each Earth Land. War Room, tap, add a colorless, 3 tap, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, draw a card, so that's 0 in this deck. And then you just fill out the rest of them with just wastes. Those are all the cards that I would include if I was going to build a Krang Utrom Warlord Commander deck. Seems like a ton of fun. If you'd like to see the list, like I mentioned before, there is a Mox field in the description. You can check it out. If you're planning on building this commander, please let me know your thoughts on this deck list and what cards you would include in the description. I think maybe this deck could also use more mana rain. I think relying on just playing as many lands as possible is not going to work out great. But I hope you have a good rest of your day, and may your top decks be ever in your favor. Thank you.